I am almost trembling here now with anger.
I can see how strongly you feel.
This is absolutely unacceptable behaviour by people who were paid by the party to serve the party and serve the country. And they behaved like the most selfish of individuals, venal and stupid, all at the same time.
Tim Montgomerie is with us now, the founder of Conservative Home and a leading commentator. Hello to you, Tim.
Hi, John.
So look, this investigation into improper, maybe illegal betting by highly placed, well, certainly well-placed conservatives, it's bad, this, but how bad do you think it is?
Well, it's awful, indefensible, and I've been speaking to Conservative members and activists today, and they're shell-shocked. It's almost like every time we get up from the last, knock to our morale, something else knocks us down. And I've had 3 members say they've decided enough is enough today. They've resigned.
They've resigned?
Yeah, I hope one of them or 2 of them might even come onto the programme later and explain why. Talking to them at the moment. But, there'll be lots of listeners out there who'll just think this confirms every suspicion they have about politicians and perhaps the Conservative Party in particular. And I get that. And I realise there's not much charity towards people in politics, but most people I know in politics are good people. They're volunteers. This is their way of, serving the public. And they're not for six. They don't understand this. They're hurt. One person yesterday evening was crying on the phone to me.
Over this scandal.
Over this. They just feel, they give their hours free in the evening. They work hard for the party. They think they're doing this for their community, their constituency. People may disagree with them, but they're doing it for the right reasons. And then people at the centre are making money in the most venal, spivish, selfish way. It boils the blood. And what I'd love to see, John, is I don't know where Rishi Sunak has been for the last week.
Yes.
I know he's been going through the motions and doing his interviews, but this is a general election campaign, for goodness sake. Where's the last significant intervention he made? When did he tell us? When did he communicate? I am almost trembling here now with anger.
I can see how strongly you feel.
This is absolutely unacceptable behaviour by people who were paid by the party to serve the party and serve the country. And they behaved like the most selfish of individuals, venal and stupid, all at the same time.
Yeah, I should make the point that we're talking about an ongoing investigation.
And
we'll see how it plays out and who ends up.
And I'm hearing,
in
half a dozen more people in Tory HQ are apparently under investigation. This may, you said it may go wider. That's what I'm hearing too. We'll see.
Did they? Could they? Would they? The news that Rishi Sunak's closest aide in Parliament placed a bet on the date of the election, 3 days before the country and his MPs and his party knew anything about it, that was already a scandal in the making. But now the Times is reporting the extraordinary story that the director of the Conservative election campaign, Tony Lee, along with his Tory candidate wife Laura Saunders, are also under scrutiny in an investigation into the potential use of the highest possible level of political inside information to cash in at the bookies. Up and down the country, Conservative candidates and campaign workers are quietly fuming at being kept in the dark, then having the snap election date sprung on them out of the blue. Many feel they weren't given nearly enough time to prepare. They now find themselves, if you believe the polls, facing a devastating defeat on the 4th of July. So we can only imagine how those Tory troops will feel about the suggestion that some at or near the top of the government and their party may have placed bets they knew they couldn't lose on the days of a campaign the pollsters, pundits and some other cabinet ministers believe they can't win. Well, Michael Gove said it would be reprehensible for someone to use inside information to bet on the election date. The Gambling Commission is investigating, and that investigation has grown in scale. Let's now then say hi to Ed Vaizey, of course, the former Culture Minister, now a Conservative peer and a fellow Times Radio presenter. Hello to you, Ed.
Hi, John.
Ed, hi. I reckon I'm a pretty much weather-beaten and seasoned journalist and as well as broadcaster. You are a seasoned politician as well as a journalist and broadcaster. My gob was smacked. Was your gob smacked, Ed?
It's pretty appalling. I mean, let's not forget, obviously, as Henry said in his interview, and you've no doubt said throughout, these are allegations. We don't quite know what's happened. We don't know who has made bets. We don't know the size of the bets. But the fact that this is a news story and the names have come out is terrible. You can imagine what happened. I mean, when I heard that one of the protection officers was also under scrutiny, it's a very close circle of people that would know when a general election is being called. And the people who need to know are the Prime Minister and his closest confidants in terms of cabinet members and people around him in Downing Street. But obviously, the special branch officer, if indeed these allegations have any substance, there will be people who have to be next to the Prime Minister whenever he's making a phone call. So there's a huge relationship of trust there that's been breached by everyone. I can't for a minute, by the way, let's be clear about this. I doubt for a minute that Rishi Sunak had even the slightest clue that anyone was going off doing this kind of thing, and anyone who tries to extrapolate some kind of bizarre conspiracy theory that the election was called in order that people could place bets to make money is for the birds. But people clearly thought, well, I've got this privileged information. It's privileged for 3 or 4 days. This is very, very valuable. I'll go and make a bit of money on the side. And I think Henry's interview puts it all in perspective. You know, the hard-working foot soldiers who are slogging their guts out during this election, despite all the evidence about what impact their efforts are making on the ground. There's always, by the way, a massive tension between those working on the ground and CCHQ in any event. You know, people criticize the campaign literature that comes from central office. They criticize the sort of directives that are handed down. So this does not help. Quite the opposite in terms of central office having any authority over candidates on the ground and how they conduct their campaigns.
Yeah, which I suppose does lend itself to the analysis that, well, maybe this won't make things much worse. I mean, the Titanic can only sink once, right? I mean, and this is, but it's just more pain. I also think, Ed, you make a fair point about Rishi Sunak. I mean, we go back to other scandals in the past, Partygate, for example. Boris Johnson turned out to be absolutely up to his neck in it. It was indicative of the way Boris Johnson did things, and that was why he was ultimately drummed out of the party, out of Parliament rather, by his own side. Rishi Sunak is generally seen as being very different to that, a guy who does have a reputation for a good deal more personal integrity. But maybe that, Ed, just feeds an alternative narrative, which is that Rishi Sunak in some ways is looking like a bit of a helpless passenger in his own campaign, a helpless passenger on the journey, which is going so badly.
Well, that is a fair point. I'm obviously defending Rishi Sunak from having any knowledge of this. And there are kind of 2 points that come from what you just said. First of all, this is reminiscent of the COVID parties, because, of course, the subtext and the message that gets to the public, the people who notice this story, will be the rules don't apply to us, which is the message that came from Partygate. So if you're thinking the people at the top are actually trying to make money off this election, you're very angry about that. The second thing is that although, you know, I always said, you know, one of the benefits of Rishi Sunak being a very wealthy man is that there would be no question of him ever being tempted to do anything untoward in order to make money or to attract money to the Conservative Party or whatever. There is still a question of leadership here, which is important. And do you set the tone in Downing Street that says any behaviour like this is beyond the pale? And maybe it's just impossible to do that when, to use your euphemism of the Titanic, everyone thinks, well, the game's over anyway. What have I got to lose, as it were? But there will still, even though, as I say, I think Rishi Sunak, I'm certain that Rishi Sunak will have had no knowledge of this whatsoever.
Yeah, well, you would think the meanest.
But people will say that he created. There's a climate in Downing Street, a bit like there was under Boris in Downing Street, where people think anything goes.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm sort of with you, and maybe cutting Rishi Sunak a little bit of slack here. That it would be beyond bizarre, the idea that he had any involvement or knowledge of what was going on. But I mean, you say that an expectation of bad times coming, maybe just the inhibitions of behaviour go. But you'd think the meanest intelligence, you know, we'll see how this shapes out, and in who is finally in the frame. But the meanest intelligence could see the perils of this sort of thing. I mean, how do you reckon it's going to play with the public? I think it's going to cut through, Ed, like a knife. Everyone gets betting, using inside knowledge, denied to people who trust you, cashing in at a bad time for your party and everyone else.
Yeah, I think it will cut through. I mean, I think what will be worse if it comes out that there are any kind of significant sums bet. Some people, you know, if somebody's bet 50 quid, you might think, well, that's a bit stupid, but it's only 50 quid. By the way, I don't know what the odds were on July the 4th election if you placed the bet on whenever the election was called at the beginning of June or whatever. I'd love to know what the odds were. But if somebody's found to have bet £10,000, for example, that really will cut through. People will be absolutely appalled to hear that. And that is not good. Look, let's not forget, though, that people do make money from elections. I mean, these endless polls that we're getting, these MRP polls and so on, they're all being crunched in the hedge funds in the City of London, and people are taking spread bets on how many seats. But at least to a certain extent, that is a game of skill.
Yeah.
Can I put it that way? They are access to privileged information in the sense they've got information that you and I probably couldn't afford to access, or indeed wouldn't understand if we did have the right to access it. But elections are a chance for people to make money. And some people will use their skill, just their natural political instincts, to put bets down and see if they can make money.
Yeah, I think the suggestion is that may not have been the case in this case. Ed Vaizey, great to talk to you, Ed. Let's talk again soon.